It's 9 o'clock. To be respectful of everybody's time, we'll go ahead and get started. Before I turn it over to Megan, I just have a few housekeeping procedures to go over for this morning. Since this is a very much a discussion this morning and a lot of question and answers, we do encourage you to keep your cameras on. It's certainly not a requirement, but it would be nice to see everybody's faces as we're speaking to everyone. However, if you can remain muted during the call when you're not speaking, that would be wonderful. That'll help cut down on any background noise while others are speaking. If you do have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in when appropriate. If you're not comfortable jumping in, you can certainly raise your hand with the little hand icon at the bottom of your screen, or put the question into the chat and we'll prompt the question as needed. There is a button on your screen that I'd like you all to avoid. It is a rectangle with an up arrow that says share screen. Please do not click that button, as that will share your entire screen and it will just disrupt the presentation. If you do have any technical issues, please put those into the chat feature and I'll do my best to help you through those. Just be aware that most of the time the issues stem from your own Wi-Fi connection. If anyone has dialed in via telephone today, please send me an email at mfrey@pghq.com. That way we can make sure you get your PDR credits for today. And finally, we are recording the session today. So if you ever want to refer back to it, or if any of your colleagues aren't able to join this morning, we will have it on our YouTube channel for future reference. So before I hand it over to Megan, I did want to give a brief introduction for Dr. Alison Curdt, who is joining us here for this hour, and then Suzy Whaley will be joining us around 10. So Alison is a PGA Master Professional in Instruction and an LPGA Master Professional, making her one of only 2 women to be a dual Master Professional in both organizations. She was chosen as the LPGA's National Teacher of the Year in 2015, the Southern California PGA Section's PGA Teacher and Coach of the Year in 2016, the Section's Club Fitter of the Year in 2018. Recently, the section inducted her into the Teaching Hall of Fame and was named their 2019 PGA Golf Professional of the Year. She's played in 7 major championships and currently teaches at Wood Ranch Golf Club in the Los Angeles area. She has completed her doctorate of psychology in clinical psychology with an emphasis in sports psychology and a master's degree in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. She's a practicing psychotherapist in the state of California and currently works with adolescents, couples, families, individuals in her private practice, Curdt Performance Therapy. With that, I will turn it over to our Women's Committee Chair, Megan Spiro.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. I want to say good morning to everyone. This is our 3rd annual Women's Roundtable that we have hosted, and I just have to tell you that it just keeps getting better and better, bigger and bigger, and we are just so super excited to have Alison on the call today. Matt, Courtney, thank you to your team to help putting this together, all the great communication out to the section for it. Alison, thank you for getting up early to join us today. We are so excited to have you here and to just kind of hear a little bit about, what motivates you, a little bit about your teaching style, etc. This is going to be a really great call. And while we do have questions prepared, we want to make sure everyone knows that this is an open dialogue. We definitely want conversation back and forth. So feel free to keep raising your hand, asking questions, and keeping this conversation going. So this is open for everybody to kind of talk and ask any questions they have. So Alison, again, it's great to have you here. I don't know how you managed to do everything that you have done. That is quite inspirational and motivation driven. So tell us a little bit, just to get us started, about your teaching style and what has kind of motivated you through the years. I mean, you're incredibly accomplished. What keeps you going?
Well, I'll start with the first question, a bit about my teaching style. It's certainly student-centered, so I don't fit into any one method of teaching. I'm sort of an eclectic, if you will, where I like to be very educated on a variety of different types of methods. And then when I meet my student and assess what their personal goals are, what their limitations are, what their time constraints are, then I build and customize the lesson for them. And so if there's a student that, let's say, is more of a double pivoter, then I'll put them into that type of style. If there's someone who needs to have a little bit more lead leg single axis bias, then I tend to put them in that. So whatever the student is looking for, I'm going to customize and make sure that I meet their goals within that lesson. So I kind of put myself in that eclectic category where I make sure that I'm well versed in all sorts of different swing styles and swing methods in order to help my student. What has motivated me over the years in order to get to this place is to make sure that I'm not in the golf shop anymore. I've been that lead assistant at a high-end facility. I've worked in private clubs, resorts, and I just found that I am most happy and really am my best version of myself when I'm helping other people. And as I went throughout my career, there was a place in time where I spent about 50% of my time teaching and 50% of my time managing, merchandising, running golf ops and tournaments, and just found that I was most happy, and what served and fulfilled me was being with other people outside, teaching the game that I love so much. And so I was able to move myself into a position of building my own business, identifying as a separate business entity than my club, and then running a successful business with Wood Ranch that includes teaching and coaching, mental coaching, club fitting, personal development, and player development. And that has really inspired me because I don't feel like I have a job. I get to do something that I really love, and I just happen to get paid for it.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, we have a lot of instructors on the call this morning, and I'm sure they kind of feel the same way. I mean, you don't just kind of fall into teaching, right? We all kind of have started that way, but those that have a passion are so focused on it and are driven by it, and it's a lifestyle, right? I mean, I'm sure a lot of you teachers out there certainly think that way when you're out there teaching your students. So when it comes to the sports psychology end of things, do you find that that's a bit more difficult to kind of teach your students depending upon their different skill levels, etc.?
I think we all know that the different personalities we encounter on the lesson tee makes us feel like we're a chameleon. So there's going to be different types of personalities where we have to be more assertive, and maybe somewhere we have to step back a little bit, and somewhere we are a bit complacent, and others we have to cheerlead. So as golf professionals and teachers and coaches, we have to really understand our own psychology so that we can adapt and blend with the many varieties of personalities that we face. I think sports psychology is just as equally hard as teaching individuals, but the vulnerabilities that people open up with and we have to kind of dig into, that can be more defended and guarded against. So in that aspect, it is a little bit more challenging because some players don't like to look at the things that they're not good at, or they don't like to identify some of their mental weaknesses in performance and strategy. But I feel like with the amount of education that I have and the past 10 years of including sports psychology in my business, I've got a better grasp on it than I did when I first started to experiment in sports psychology. But I'm still always enamored with the different types of personalities that I face every single hour that I teach. For example, today I'm teaching 8 to 4 back-to-back with no breaks, and I'm going to have so many different personalities that I'm going to face with different sports psychology issues, different performance issues, learning issues, how they integrate the information, and then I have to be the chameleon in order to adapt and blend and weave with all of the different personalities that step onto my lesson team.
Yeah, so how do you do that? I mean, we've all spent long days on lesson tee at one time or another. So how do you prepare yourself going into a long day like that, knowing you have so many different personalities that you're teaching, and I mean, it's a long day. It's exhausting. It's mentally draining for you. It's physically draining. So how do you set yourself up for success when you know you have long days like that, especially when you're teaching all different types of people?
There's definitely the physical components. So proper nutrition, hydration, and sleep. I think just knowing how our engine works is critically important. So there's no way that I could get through a day like that if I went to bed at midnight and woke up at 5 and didn't have enough sleep for my system. So I make sure that I track good sleep. I'm certainly drinking 64 to 100 ounces of water every day. And then something that I'm better at now that I used to be horrible at was making sure that I have proper nutrition throughout the day. So at the end of the day, if I still feel energized after 8 lessons, then I know that I had the proper nutrition throughout my day. So I try to make sure that I eat something small every 2 to 3 hours. But in terms of psychologically preparing myself for those different types of students that I face, sometimes we all see that one student that pops onto the agenda and we're like, oh gosh, here we go again. I know what I'm going to have to deal with. I think a big help for me has been letting go of my ego. So when I let go of what I know and where I've been and all my successes, and I let that go and I just bring myself to my students' level, it allows me to be way more compassionate, to have a ton more empathy, and to put myself in their shoes. And what I notice for myself is when I do have a clash with a student, it's because of ego. It's because they're holding on to their ego, I'm holding on to my ego, and it's almost this battle of like, who's right? And it's almost, we go back to business practices, the customer's always right. In this case, the customer is the student, and the student is right. They are the expert on themselves. I'm not the expert on them. So I need to meet my student where they're at. And so when I let go of my biases, when I let go of my perspective and I take off my glasses and I get into their world and I meet them where they're at, we seem to flow a lot more in harmony instead of having the clashes. And I think that helps me really better prepare.
Yeah, wow. That's, I just can't imagine just the mental switch you have to do between lessons. Just the idea of how do you kind of reset, right? Between maybe teaching a junior and then switching to somebody that's retired, learning the game, and kind of resetting your own mental state to be fresh and prepared for the next student. So what does a typical lesson look like to you, kind of from start to finish? Let's say it's somebody that you've been teaching for a few months. How do you kind of start the lesson? How do you finish the lesson? Do you follow up with the student, etc.?
So I've definitely changed my business model over the years. And the one that works best for me right now, which doesn't mean that it can't evolve, is working in the 60-minute zone. So I have stopped teaching 30-minute lessons or those little quick fixes. And my schedule right now is on the 60 minutes. So it starts on the hour, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. And typically the first 5 to 10 minutes is going to be a check-in. So lots of questions. And I tell my students right off the bat, I'm going to be asking you tons of questions throughout our relationship together, because it's how we get information from our students, kind of like a doctor and a patient coming into the doctor's office. The doctor asks a lot of questions. So in that first 5 to 8, 10 minutes, I'm asking them, what was your practice like? What sort of things have you observed since our last time together? Are there any patterns in your ball flight? Were there any uncomfortable sensations as you were training? My big one is, what feedback did you use? I'm usually continually disappointed with the answer of that from my students, because they tend to use the ball flight as the only source of feedback. So what sources of feedback did you use? How did you train? If I was a fly on the wall following you the past couple of weeks, what would I see you practicing and training? What was it like on the golf course? What kind of scores did you produce? What were your highlights? What were some of your failures? And then as we start to finish up that information gathering, what is your goal for today? What would you like to work on today? So that I'm making sure I'm customizing the lesson for them. If we just start hitting 7 irons, but their desire was to really work on their driver, and I didn't give them the chance to articulate that, then they're going to walk away feeling like they were unheard. So I think that's really important. What do you like to achieve today? Why are you here today? How can I help you? And you can figure out the best way that you can word that for yourself. In that next segment, the next 15 to 20 minutes is going to be observations of the things that they want to work on. And during that time, I'll be using some video. So I use OnForm, and I typically will always have some sort of before image of them and then compare it to after we've made an improvement strategy. So as I'm watching them and observing them, I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the root source of the issue that they want to fix. So not looking for the most sexiest change, I'm looking for the root cause, which could be 3 or 4 steps down the line when I look at a sequence of a swing. And when I mentor and I coach young instructors, they tend to go for the most obvious fix. Oh, that swing is moving over the top. But what they really don't know is when you take away all the surface, the layers of the onion, if you will, it could have been just a pure setup issue. It could have been just a pure grip issue, which is causing the overtop. So I make sure I'm very careful that the improvement strategy I select is really the root cause of the chain reaction in their swing that they're trying to work on. From that, the next couple of moments, like 10 minutes, is going to be assigning a drill or a movement pattern that we can work through together, and then give them an opportunity to integrate that into their nervous system. And then near the end of the lesson, we're going to go into performance practice. And so this is one of the most critical pieces of the lesson, because it's not just do this drill and I'll see you in a week. It's how do you take this drill, integrate it into your nervous system, bring it into your full motor pattern, and then bring it to the golf course. And that transference from lesson and learning state to performance state is what a lot of coaches miss out on delivering to their student. So I articulate what the plan is in order to bring that to the golf course. So we'll do some performance practice, full shot routine, picking different golf clubs, pulling out taking the alignment rod away and putting them in the scenario where they actually have to align and use different skills. Maybe even going to take a quick putt and then coming back to hit that shot, so that there's a moment of forgetting, and then a moment of retrieval, and then a moment of performing. And so at the very end, we then summarize what the entire lesson was about. They have access to their videos. When I'm explaining or talking about a particular concept or improvement strategy, it's all being recorded, so they can rewatch that recording after the lesson. We make sure that they have a clear plan on what they're going to be doing between today and the time that they see me next. And then the accountability is going to be on them after that. Now, the app that I use for the video system allows them to chat with me. So if they get a few days down the line and they have an additional question about, hey, what did you say about this thing? They can go ahead and send it into the chat. And now I'm not getting infiltrated with a bunch of text messages and emails. It all stays within the app. And then for my own work-life balance, I can control when I log in and answer those questions. And so after that, I send them on my way.
What's the name of the app again?
The name of the app is OnForm. It was formerly Huddle Technique, and then the developers upgraded it, and it's actually a fantastic piece of equipment.
Does anybody else on the call use that for any type of teaching apps, communication apps? No. I think that's kind of a fairly new piece of technology, I would say, or teaching tool.
2019.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, I think it's definitely needed, right? Because I don't think anybody really wants to be inundated with, 40 texts in a day of how does my swing look? What am I doing? Remind me about this. So yeah, that's a great tool. I definitely wrote that one down. So going back to the idea of the learning versus performance, do you do a lot of on-course instruction or playing lessons, etc.? Do your students seem to react well to that?
Yes, I'd say every day I'm on the golf course with at least one student. And being at a private club, but still having the ability to teach non-members and members really gives me a lot of flexibility within some certain windows to just jump out to get a hole or two in. So there are some times where we actually schedule like 9 holes. I don't actually play in playing lessons. I've had a lot of discussions with other coaches like, do you play? Do you play? And I actually prefer to coach because I feel like it's their hour and I want to make sure that I am giving 100% of myself to them. So at least every day I'm on the golf course with a student doing something, whether it's let's go work on 40-yard pitches, but see how it actually rolls out on a green, or you're really struggling on hole 13. So let's go out there and think of some mental strategies on how you can perform better. I would say that in total, On-course coaching needs to be more emphasized if we can. I know facilities are very unique and specific to how we can do that, but the game is played on the golf course. It's not played on the driving range. We all know that. So being able to get our students onto the playing field is extremely important. And how I relate it to is if I wanted to learn how to play baseball, and I learned how to play baseball by going to a batting cage. And that's the only component that I worked on, being in a batting cage. And then someone said, all right, let's go play a game. You're going to be on this team. I'd be completely lost. And I think our students feel that way too, especially newer students. They come to us, they see us on a driving range or a practice facility, and then we are expected to have them just go on the golf course and perform this thing. So right from the beginning, even brand new golfers who have never held a golf club before, I like to bring them onto the golf course so they can start learning the game in the environment that they're going to begin to play it in.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important because that's where you're playing, right? You're on the golf course. You're not playing the game on the range. So starting that from the beginning is so important. I just saw that Joanna, she mentioned that she uses Coach 360. Joanna, are you on the call? You want to tell us a little bit about how you use that there at Marion? She might have jumped off. All right, no worries. So when you're using, what kind of advice would you have? Because I think a lot of us aren't as necessarily as familiar with or as educated with the mental side of the game. So what kind of advice do you have for us professionals that really kind of want to start putting that into our instruction and into our teaching? How do you do that? So you can't just jump all the way in. So how do you slowly start integrating that?
Certainly. Well, I would suggest building a team first. We've talked about, through our industry, building a team of fitness professionals and experts in other disciplines that you might not be an expert in. And I get that not everyone wants to be an expert in the mental game and golf psychology, nor should everybody be an expert in that. So first, build a team. So look at sports psychologist or sports psychotherapist in your area. You want to have a good referral source to be able to take students who need a higher level of care and be able to refer them. And so Joanna Co. at Marion, we have a fantastic relationship where she sees certain students that need a higher level of care in mental performance, and she refers them to me, and we've created a great team. Other professionals that want to start bringing in some basic foundational knowledge of sports psychology, I encourage you to take an online college course. There's a lot of colleges that you can get an online certificate. So it might be a collection of 5 to 8 courses in sports psychology. And you're really going to get the best information from that as you would from an online training program, watching podcasts on YouTube, or maybe just reading a couple of golf psychology books. Because that information is usually peer validated, because it's appropriate for the university. It is something that would really enhance your basic foundations of sports psychology. But I encourage you to operate within your scope of professionalism. So if you notice that someone needs a higher level of care, don't try to jump in and mental coach. What I have seen in the industry so far is a lot of people using the branding and the terming of mental coach when they don't have the skill set or the ability to really fit that. So by just taking one sports psychology class, wouldn't be appropriate to say I'm a mental coach. But if you were to earn a certificate from a university where you have a series of different classes that cover things like emotional regulation, motivation, the big 5 in sports psychology, then you can really start to have a background and a foundation to share some of that information with your students. Even motor learning and control would be really fantastic for us as golf professionals to start to integrate. I'd also recommend start building a library of your favorite golf psychology books, because all the time students are saying, well, what do you think I can read? What do you think that will help me? And there's a ton of great books on the market that a student, a consumer can read and start to enhance a little bit of their awareness in sports psychology. So if you just build a library, build a list, it's a lot easier for you to answer that question, shoot them over your favorite golf psychology books. And then lastly, finding a mentor. So if you find a great sports psychology consultant, psychologist, psychotherapist, coach, start to partner with them and say, hey, I'd like to learn the ropes of how I can integrate this into my world as a PGA professional. Can I learn from you? Can we have weekly coffee chats? Can we have an opportunity to talk about some of the ways that you help your clients?
Yeah, and the mental game has certainly evolved, right? So I remember playing in college in the mid 90s, and we got introduced to a sports psychologist, and it was like, blew our mind, right? It was just something completely new. Like, what is this? Wow, this is incredible. And you've seen it grow a lot, and all the different books that are on the market and everything like that. Give us maybe just a simple example of kind of how you put that mental teaching, into your instruction. A lot of us think of it as, oh, the mental psychology, this big, huge world. How do you kind of simplify that thought just a little bit? Just little tips and tricks in terms of the mental game.
Well, I think from your first interaction with a student, you're already into the mental game because you're listening to the player's experience and you're already starting to learn about their psychology, their biases, their perspectives. So, for example, if a player hits a shot and we're working on changing their motor pattern and they say, oh, that's horrible. That was such a horrible shot. Okay, well, you already have a little bit of insight into their reaction, their ability to contain emotion, and how they perceive adversity and failure. So right now you're already becoming a golf psychologist right there. And how do you change that? Do you just let them say that shot was horrible? Maybe you witnessed and observed a motor pattern that was fantastic, but how the club face interacted with the ball that one particular time wasn't ideal, but you really liked the organization of their body, you liked the sequence, you liked the delivery, or they actually did something different that you had coached them to do. So in that perspective, I asked them, well, what was horrible about it? Can you be more specific? And when you challenge the student to actually flesh out that was bad, that was horrible, you force them to start looking and being critical about the characteristics that they didn't like. Well, I didn't like the direction it went. Okay, so now we can kind of go down a Socratic method of figuring out, well, what caused it to go the way that you didn't like? By the way, do we even know what kind of shot you would like? Is there a boundary? Is there a tolerance on the range? If a ball landed within the specific zone that we know that you'd be happy with. So right from the beginning, you're already starting to introduce a little bit of psychology by communicating with your students. And I think we all need to be master communicators in dealing with our students. But that would be one of the things that I would like sort of a quick tip is when a student has a reaction that has a negative statement, ask them to clarify it, ask them to distribute some meaning to it, and that will start to allow you to understand a little bit more about their personality.
Does anyone else on the call kind of use any of their mental strategies or psychology into their teaching?
I saw Jenna raise her hand. Jenna, if you want to unmute.
So I have kind of an odd perspective into it. So I actually, before I became a golf professional, did human trafficking and domestic violence law. So a lot of that family law really actually overlaps so heavily in golf, which I'm sure you've experienced as well. And so I really try and use some of the things I learned, not only like in court, but I actually used to work at a woman's shelter. So a lot of the trainings that I did there, I find myself using that every single day. And I actually coach a high school golf team now. And I find myself just constantly like trying to break down those barriers, like get to learn what the perspectives of the girls are while still trying to like cheer them on, make them feel happy and confident and comfortable. Teenage girls, I feel like, are especially tough to keep them focused and keep them motivated, especially after sitting in class all day. But when you ask them questions and make them open themselves up to their vulnerabilities without like pushing that limit for them, it helps them engage more and helps them want to buy into whatever you're trying to do with them, and just creates a more open environment for learning to take place. And honestly, like, it takes a little bit of time sometimes with the tough ones, but once you come down to it, like, that's when you're going to get the most repeat lessons. And that's when you're going to open up like an extra level of trust where they're not just coming to you for golf lessons, but you're actually seen as the ultimate like expert in what you're doing. And that's how you create that strong bond and trust. But actually for Alison, what are some of your like best tips for when you're in that large group situation? How do you just like keep that constant like give and take between the student and the coach to like have them buy in as best as they can and like always be pushing themselves and always like doing their best?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I want to go back to your sharing. So I thought you really well stated that. And really, I mean, psychology is psychology. So whether we take away the term golf psychology or sports psychology, or even therapy, like there's so many crossovers between just the concepts of psychology and the population that you're working it with. When we put a label on it, golf psychology, it really just identifies it as the population that you're working with. So I think that's really cool that you were able to bring some of the things that you learned from DV and trafficking in order and bring that into your teaching and coaching. But I think that when you deliver yourself with empathy and compassion and someone knows that you care, you have a buy-in forever. And that's really what our students want, is they want to know that they've been seen, they've been heard, and that someone cares enough about their problem to help fix it. And particularly with the population that you're talking about, it's extremely hard. Teenage boys can be hard too, but you can kind of be a little more jovial with them in a different way. I think that the age 11 to 16 is probably the hardest for women. When you show them that they care and you get on their level and you find interest in their world, whatever that might be, you have a friend for life, you have a student for life, and they know that they can count on you. And I specifically remember working with a student who was going into their freshman year of high school, and you could tell that she was just a little uncomfortable in her own skin. I won't even say awkward, just uncomfortable in her own skin, as we all had been going through puberty and transitioning from middle school to high school. And the question came up about music, and she mentioned Billie Eilish. And at the time, Billie Eilish was like coming up on the scene, and I was like, oh, I haven't heard that name before. So that night I went home and I researched everything I could, and I listened to music from her. Now we all say Billie Eilish, and we pretty much all know who she is. And so I went back to that next lesson and started talking like I knew who Billie Eilish was and like I was a fan. And next thing you know, her performance was so elevated because she was more engaged. She knew that I cared about her personal interest. She knew that we could take a break from hitting golf balls and talk about a new song that came on, or even listen to a song together. And so just those small little nuggets of showing interest in another human being and that compassion, that elevates their sport performance because they know someone cares about them, they feel loved, they feel safe. And when they feel safe, they're able to try new things and they're able to engage in the drills and activities that you have set up for them.
Hey, Tom,
Morning.
I see you raised your hand if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. You might still be on mute there, Tom. Oh, technical difficulties. I have a quick question for you, Doctor. You mentioned work-life balance previously. That's been a very hot topic in our district roundtables so far this year, and I know that's it's come up a lot with PGA recruitment in particular. How do you manage your work-life balance, and how has that evolved over the course of your career?
Well, I'll say that I have a much different opinion. Hopefully it's not offensive to anyone on this call about work-life balance. I don't believe it exists, and I don't believe it needs to exist. In order to be excellent and great in something, you have to be all in and all invested. Serena Williams would not have been Serena Williams if she had work-life balance. She invested her entire upbringing and life into being the greatest tennis player and potentially the greatest athlete ever on our earth. So I think that work-life balance is specific to the individual. So if somebody wants to devise their life where they only work 6 to 8 hours and then they spend a ton of time with their family and then they have a lot of social time, that's fantastic. That's their work-life balance. If I choose to burn my candle at both ends and get my doctorate degree and work full time and work a second job to purchase a house, and I feel happy about that, those are my choices. That might not look like work-life balance in the normative definition of it. But if you find that you're fulfilled and you find that you're partitioning your time where you feel joy, your balance is going to look different than someone else's balance. And I think that in order to go down that route of excellence, if you choose to, you're going to have to be more invested in certain times, in certain things. So when I was getting my doctorate degree, I was really heavily invested in studying and writing tons of papers and doing my research. I didn't have time for Netflix and socialization. So during those 3 or 4 years, my friend time went down. Well, now that I'm in a place of my life where I hold my 2 jobs, I can bring that friend time back up. So work-life balance is evolving. It's unique, it's specific. If you choose to answer emails at 9 p.m. at night, that is your choice. If you choose to shut it off at 6 p.m. and say, I don't want that to interfere with my evening time, that is your choice too. So when you look at work-life balance, make sure it fits you and not the normative definition of what the industry says is balance. You will feel happier and more fulfilled when you have that choice and that opportunity to put your energy where you want it to at any given time.
That's great. Thank you. Tom, I see you're back on. If you want to hit that unmute button down at the bottom of your screen. Yeah, sorry, Tom, we still can't hear you. If you want to put it into the chat, you can do that too. Sorry. Megan, you want to jump in while Tom?
Well, he's figuring that out. So yeah, work-life balance is an interesting thing. And I think it is true. It's so unique for each person because everyone's situation is completely different. Some people have kids, some people don't. Some people work different types of professions, et cetera, that require different hours. So it's definitely a unique situation. Kind of just a fun question for you. Years ago when I was teaching a lot more, I had a great opportunity to instruct some professional baseball players when I lived in Florida. And that was a lot of fun. And it was a completely different experience because now you're working with another professional athlete and seeing how they approach the game. Have you had those situations, whether it's professional athlete, et cetera, and kind of what was the difference between that and just your typical lessons?
Yes, I'll give you a couple of examples. I have, being in Los Angeles, I certainly have a lot of access to celebrities and people who do amazing things. I have a fair amount of individuals right now who are in the LA Philharmonic, so professional musicians. And the process of learning new music or to have a set list that they're going to perform on a Friday and they get it on a Monday is so interesting to learn their process and how they get into very quickly an automatic state of performance. And so we have these really amazing conversations about golf is so similar. Why wouldn't you approach your golf like you do learning the percussions for Friday night's performance? What is performance like on stage at the Hollywood Bowl as opposed to being in the rehearsal room? Working with some Los Angeles Rams players, some former baseball players. It's so interesting that when I just bring their attention to the demands that made them as elite and high performing in their own particular sport, they have to do those similar things in golf. It's really not much different. And I work with a United States Olympic team. So I'm the lead therapist for a team that trains here in Los Angeles. And it's in a sport that I didn't know anything about, artistic swimming, which is formerly synchronized swimming. So I had to do some research. And what's interesting is the principles of performance are identical to golf performance. The medium is just different. They're in a pool and they're using some teamwork and The fitness component is much different. But from a psychological perspective, it's nearly the same as what we have to go through in golf. So I think that as Jen and I were kind of talking about taking away the label golf psychology or marriage and family therapy, the principles are the same, and we tend to use them in our disciplines in a variety of ways. So with professional athletes and performers, I just ask them, how did you get to the place that you're at now, where you can play a piece of music or you can throw a football in the Super Bowl without thinking? And they always say, with tons and tons of practice. No way. That's what we have to do in golf too. So when you only hit one bucket of balls between last week's lesson and this week's lesson, are you really going to move the needle that much? And they're like, no, okay, I see. I spend 8 hours a day usually for the past 15 years in order to get to this place of playing in the Super Bowl. So could we take some elements of that so that we feel like we are moving the needle on their improvement and they're having a good time and they're still filled with joy, but they actually get to see that physical change?
We had a question come in from Mitchell Smith. He asked, how many lessons on average are you teaching a week? And have you raised your hourly fee as you've grown your lesson clientele?
Oh, definitely. So 8 lessons a day, 5 days a week, usually booked out 4 to 5 weeks in advance. There are some times that I know I'm going to be away for a tournament, so I might work 6 days in a particular week to make up for 3 days that I'm going to be in town next week. I certainly have raised my hourly rate. I started originally right in the beginning of my career at $100, and I stayed there for an incredibly long time. And then as I started to earn some different teaching awards and felt that my rate was validated to improve, it's certainly moved up in the past year, in the past couple of years. But I will say that I was playing with Suzy Whaley, who she's going to be on here pretty soon, in the junior senior championship at the beginning of 22. And we were having this conversation about rates. And I was kind of in this pivotal point, like, I'm at a private club and they kind of know me at this rate, but gosh, my background and everything just kind of validates me to be at this rate. And she really pushed me to just say, like, take the plunge, make that change, set the boundary, don't waver over it. Don't do a bunch of these little, okay, well, for a couple of weeks, you'll be this rate and then you'll move up. Just like set the rate and be done. And you'll be really happy. And so I thought about that. And since I had her encouragement, I changed my rate to what I thought was industry standard in my area and with my credentials and background. And I set the rate and I gave my students a 4-week notice that on this particular date, here's the rate. And I never looked back. And it was the first time that I gave myself a raise that I really felt good about it. And so she had mentioned to me, in most industries, you're going to get a 3% raise, at least a cost of living raise every single year. And are we doing that with our rates? Now, not that you have to raise your rate every single year, but if you stay at $100 for 7-8 years, you're actually not even moving with the industry. And so when I gave myself that raise, I'll say that I went into lessons more refreshed, more energized, because I actually felt like I was validated for the time that I was committing. And, of course, I've had some students who are like, oh, that's too much. I'll have to find someone else. Okay, no problem. I mean, if you want to go to the best doctor, they're not going to lower their rate to accommodate you. They're going to say, this is my rate. You either want to come see me or you don't. And so I think I'm at that place now. I've been teaching for 18 years, so I don't think I could have done that in my first 5 years. But after almost 2 decades of teaching, I do feel like I have that place to raise my rate. And I'll probably intend to do it more on the 5-year cycle than I would every year, because I feel like, at some point, don't want to be charging customers $500 for a golf lesson. I want to keep it realistic to the game that we're playing.
So with that topic, what kind of advice do you have, though, for the professionals that say aren't the ones that set their rates? So if I'm a teaching professional at a club or an assistant professional at the club, typically it's management that sets those rates. Do you have any advice for those that, how do you go to the management and say, I really would like to increase my personal rates for lessons for this particular reason?
The best way that I have found for that to work is when you show what value in a dollar amount you have brought to the facility. And so don't go into a meeting saying, this is what I need. Go into the meeting and say, this is what I've produced for the facility, to make your argument convincing for why you'd want to justify increasing your rate. So one thing that I started doing under the mentorship of a fantastic individual who was like, do you ever show your value yearly to your facility? And I was like, no, but that's a great idea. So I built my own revenue calculator. And at the end of the year, through club fitting, food and beverage sales, clinic sales that then tied in different types of food and beverage, new members that came on property that bought food and beverage, new members that came on property that then transferred to actual members. I added all of that up. And in one particular year, I think the first year I did it, I brought $80,000 to the facility that they didn't have. That was like money in their pocket, which paid for nearly 2 shop assistants' salaries. You know, the part-time, they're making like $15 an hour just behind the counter. And so I said to them, hey, look, I'm bringing you $80,000 a year just by my name being attached here. Now, of course, you allow me to use the facility. We can look at, you know, how many range balls I'm using a week or how many tee times I'm using throughout the week. But when they saw that number, they were like, you can do whatever you want. No problem. If you want to raise your rates for the members, we support you in that. Because the argument was so convincing, they were more apt to want to keep me there than to not want to make me happy by letting me raise my rate by $10, something like that. So I think do your research and know what your surrounding competitive clubs are having their golf professionals charge. See if it's realistic for your population, who your members are, and then create that convincing argument by what have you produced for the club.
So we have about 15 minutes left with Alison. I just wanted to kind of open it up before I ask any other questions to see if anyone has anything they'd like to share or ask while we have this great opportunity. Let's hoping Tom jump back on there.
I have a question. Eric Kennedy from Overbrook. First of all, Alison, by far one of the most impressive speakers that I have heard in a really long time. So thank you so much for taking the time with us this morning. Ashley speaks very highly of you, and I can see why. First point is I have a 10-year-old daughter who's turning 11. So if I could get your cell phone, that would be great. I will be calling periodically with lots of problems. I wanted to ask you, I have like 1,000 questions, but I'll keep it short. With ever since COVID, I have seen a pretty dramatic change in the amount of time people have invested in their golf game. I've seen a lot of time people have invested in simulators. They're really, I've seen it kind of in the psychology of this entire country that everybody's been online more, except maybe Tom is still trying to figure out the unmute. But do you find that all of the instruction that's out there now, and there's some really good stuff out there on YouTube, things like that, is it a net positive or a net negative for the teaching industry to have this much information readily available? You know, I call my students kind of like WebMD, right? You know, they got a cough and they go online and they want to search up if it's tuberculosis or whatever. And I think the same sort of thing with YouTube golf instruction is there is no such thing as one size fits all. And there's no way that a YouTube instructor can give a lesson to the mass audience and have it affect everybody positively. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to you and you can take all that information unpack.
First of all, peace be with you for the next 6 years. So I wish you well as you get through puberty and all of that comes with after. So hang in there. It'll be great when they turn 22, 23, 24. What I would say is it's a net positive. I think back to when I was a kid and my brain was curious. In order to find out information, I either had to ask my mom or dad, learn it from a teacher in school, or go find one of those things called like an encyclopedia and actually like look up what I wanted to learn. And it was tedious and we didn't get the full picture. Now, if I want to know the definition of a word that someone said in a conversation and I don't know what it means, I type it into my phone and I instantly have that information. So I think it's a net positive, but disclaimer, it makes our job a little bit more challenging because we now have to be the experts on what information is available, what's out there. So I'll have students that I've worked with for a year or 2 years still come and say, hey, I saw this YouTube video where this towel is under my arm and I think I should do that for my swing. Well, if you have a great rapport with your student, you can say, well, let me explain what that drill does because I personally have researched it or I've used it in my career. Here's how it doesn't fit you. And then they're like, oh, okay, you're right. Yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. So if I didn't know what was out there on the internet, and granted, we can't know everything, but you follow the top social accounts, you follow the top YouTube accounts, you see what's in Golf Digest, Golf Magazine, you breeze through it, you'll understand like what's being talked about this month, what's the flavor of the month. I mean, if you don't know the word flexion right now, then you're already behind the 8 ball because everyone's talking about lead wrist flexion, and we need to clarify that for our students. So it's a net positive. We just have to be more attuned to what's out on the marketplace so that we can talk intelligently about what's right for our students.
That's great. So, Alison, as we kind of close things out here on the last couple minutes, what, I guess, over the next 3-5 years, what do you see as maybe 1 or 2 challenges and maybe 1 or 2 really exciting things you kind of see coming down the pipe?
Definitely. I think one of the questions that had been shot over to me is what's the most exciting thing I see in future for women's golf? And I will say more women breaking barriers. In the past couple of years, we have had so many PGA and LPGA professionals break some major barriers, from first female PGA professional, Ashley Greer winning the first player of the year, section player of the year, not just women's, but section. We've had another woman win their section championship in Taylor Collins. We've seen elevations and advancements in careers with Joanna Coe getting a director of instruction at a super high-end club at Marion. We are seeing women breaking barriers at a higher rate and more frequent rate. And so that's super exciting for me because that's opening the floodgates for more women to continue to break barriers. More female GMs, head pros, district directors, female officers at the section level, more women on PGA national boards. I have this idea that I've been floating around, 50 by 2050. My hope is that by 2050, that we have 50% of our committees, 50% of our tournament wins, 50% of everything really be equitable between men and women. And it might just take that many years by 2050 to get there. But we're certainly evolving. And so what I think is exciting in the next 3 to 5 years is that we have these women that are on this trajectory, and it's going to open the door for more associates and first-year PGA members to have the confidence to step in and to jump in and not just be behind the counter, but to say, you know what, I want to be the lead instructor, or I want to be the head professional. So take me under your wing and show me what I can do in the next 5 years so that I can be running a golf club. That's one of the most exciting pieces. I think one of the challenges that we have in the golf industry is changing paradigms. We have to change our language. We have certain generations that are more open and acceptable. So millennials and Gen Zers, they seem to see equality as something a little bit different than baby boomers and Gen Xers. And so we have to start changing the paradigm in some of the generations about women's roles in the golf industry, and how it's not a men's tournament, but it's a members tournament. How the PGA of America is a member organization, not a men's organization. We have to continue to tell the story, but we have to start changing the language and how we talk about certain things. And so the challenging part is getting that message out and getting people to hear it. But the more we pound it in the industry, the more we pound it in marketing and advertising about women's role in the industry, I think that we will really continue to move the needle and evolve the game for women in particular.
Yeah, that's well said. I think there's no question that you're certainly one of those leaders that are helping us do that. So we thank you. We very much appreciate everything that you've done, all of your knowledge that you've shared, taking your time to be here. It's really appreciated. Does anyone else have any final questions before we take a quick break before we jump in with Suzy? Meg? No? All right.
I just want to say thank you very, very much. I appreciate everything you just spoke about, and everything was so well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alison, thanks a million. Appreciate it. We'll let you get on with your day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All right. I think I saw Ms. Suzy Whaley hop on. Hi, Suzy. You're still on mute, it looks like.
I'm listening. Can you hear me? Hi. Yes? No?
There we go. Yep, we can hear you, Suzy. How are you?
Talking to myself.
We do that all the time.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Morning. Thanks for jumping on the call. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to get together.
Sure. Matt, really quickly, are we okay with just going forward, or did you need to take a couple minute break or anything?
No, I think we can roll right into it. But before we do, I just like to provide a short little intro for Suzy, just so everyone's kind of aware of her complete career. So the first woman ever elected to serve as an officer of the PGA of America, PGA past president and PGA master professional Suzy Whaley is the PGA director of instruction for the Country Club of Mirasol in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and is also the PGA director of instruction for Suzy Whaley Golf. She was recognized in 2019 as one of Golf Magazine's top 100 teachers of America, and Suzy's resume includes numerous other teaching awards, including a Golf Digest Top 50 Instructor, LPGA Top 50 Instructor, two-time Connecticut PGA Teacher of the Year, and a 5-time PGA Junior Championship Finals coach. She's also instructed more than 300 children to collegiate golf, and she is a dual member of the PGA of America and LPGA Teaching Club Professional Division. She was a LPGA Tour member in 1990 and 1993, and famously qualified and participated in 2003 Greater Hartford Open, becoming the first woman since Babe Zahari's 1945 to qualify for a PGA Tour event. So with that, I will turn it over to Megan. Get started.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Suzy, thanks for being here. We really do appreciate it. This has been an incredible morning so far, having Alison on the call and then having you here join us. So thank you for taking the time. We certainly appreciate it. Tell us, what have you been doing since your role as president is over? What's been keeping you busy?
Well, first of all, I only caught the last couple of minutes of Alison, but I think she told you everything you possibly could need to know. She was amazing, and I only caught 5 minutes of it. So it's a hard act to follow. I'm doing more than I ever imagined. I thought I would slow down after my leadership role at the PGA of America. And instead I've kicked it in gear. I'm actually working 3 jobs right now. I am president of a digital streaming company called Golf Nation, which is an over-the-top television CTV company, which is golf lifestyle entertainment. Think of Food Network, HGTV. We are building that for golf. And I am overseeing that company underneath an umbrella called MBTV. I also am a commentator and an analyst for ESPN and PGA Tour Live. And I also teach, currently I teach Saturdays and I was the director of instruction at Mirasol. I still have that title, but right now I'm only teaching on the weekends. So I'm working 7 days a week and really actually loving it. But I didn't think I was going to be busier. I thought I was going to slow down. So I don't know. I think I've put myself in these things, and I call myself like a heroin addict. I hope I don't offend anybody, but I think I'm like an adrenaline junkie. So I'm really not a heroin addict. But at the end of the day, I just love the challenge, learning a brand new industry, media side, television, which is not linear, has been certainly something that has taken me close to a year in the position, and feel like I finally have my feet underneath me.
Great. Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of a theme now with Alison and you. The key to work-life balance is to have a lot of energy and work a lot. So, and enjoy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I would love to dive into that at some point in our conversation, because I think work-life balance is a crock of crap.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about that. I mean, we can just go over it, how I feel about it. I think a lot of people believe in it. I don't believe in it. I think, there's days that work supersedes the balance. There's days that family supersedes the work. And I think if you try to hold yourself to that standard, it makes our jobs as golf professionals incredibly tiring. So I'm a little tired of the expectation of having to be a perfectly balanced female in an industry that's predominantly male when it's not possible. I just want people to enjoy what they're doing in the moment they're in it, and understand there's going to be some sacrifices along the way, and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's really well said. I mean, we talked with Alison about that, how it's individual to each person, right? Kind of what they have on their plate and what they have going. So, work-life balance is different for every single person. So kind of with it though, you talked about, with being a female professional in this industry and a lot of roadblocks I'm sure a lot of us have run into through the years. How did you face that head on and kind of get to these leadership roles and just kind of keep pushing through to where you are today?
Yeah, I think, for all of us, I'm sure we all have stories, and I'm sure the men in the industry have stories that possibly we can't relate to as well, with their challenges and things that they've faced. But I'll just talk to you from my journey in the game, in hopes that maybe it resonates with a few of you. But I grew up in a household that didn't have barriers. I have a sister. I didn't have any brothers. My mom was an avid athlete who wasn't allowed to really play sport as she grew up. And so she was very encouraging and wanted us to do anything we possibly wanted and do. But I was this huge, and we used to call it tomboy. I didn't wear a dress till like the 11th grade in high school. So I was outside every single day, played 4 or 5 sports, mostly boys on my street. And I never looked at it as a gender thing. If I wanted to participate and play, I just worked harder to be invited to do that. So I do think, however, that gave me a little different perspective as I came through high school and played on an all boys golf team. There wasn't a girls golf team. And I remember sitting down with my mom and telling her I wanted to try out. And, my mom didn't say, well, gosh, that's the boys team. My mom said, well, great, you better go work out. You better go work really hard and practice really hard before the tryouts so that you can play well. And I credit her with so much of my ability to kind of take on those challenges head on without worrying about who I was, but worrying more about what I could do to get through it. And then I didn't have a family that embarrassed me over failures. I was expected not to be perfect, and I wasn't praised for being great. There were no participation trophies in my house. It was, you had to earn them. If you earned them, you got to celebrate them. But I've never been afraid of being turned away. I've had multiple failures through my career, and that is always, it's never fun. Nobody likes disappointment, and it's really hard to get through. But I just looked at it as a growth opportunity and figured out what I could do better and moved on. And I think you learn as you age to do that even better. So when I got into the PGA of America, which, by the way, I joined the LPGA first, because at the time I had 2 very young babies, and the PGA of America didn't allow you to join unless you were working a 40-hour work week. So it kind of tells you how far we have actually come in the PGA of America. Thank heavens that no longer is the case. But I joined the LPGA of America first because I couldn't join the PGA. And then by the time I joined the PGA, I was working full-time as a teacher and then a head golf professional with 2 young children. But when I joined, I didn't join because it was a men's organization as I looked at it. I joined because I wanted to play more competitive golf. And they had more opportunities to do it. And my husband was playing weekly, and I wasn't invited to join. So he called me out and said, well, you should join the PGA of America then. I'm sick of you complaining about it. And that's what I did. So people always ask me, like, did you join to be president? Did you join to be a leader? Absolutely not. I joined to beat my husband. And that was truly the case. And then as I met unbelievable PGA professionals who were my mentors, my role models, helped me with my roles. My first HP role were willing to share best practices with me. Most of the people I was meeting in tournaments were in governance, and they invited me to be on a committee. And that's really how my journey started. It was never about being the woman in the room. It was about being an active voice in the room. And there are moments in time that's incredibly difficult when nobody looks like you. But I found the more I had the opportunity to speak up and to be a part of the conversation from a seat perhaps that was different than those I was sitting with, it oftentimes, I didn't get my way oftentimes, but it oftentimes made people think. And I was always hopeful that the decisions and the outcome that came to be because I was in the room and had a different perspective was a more robust conversation and discussion, and perhaps would lead to some progressive opportunities within the PGA of America. And I think we also get this label at the PGA of America that we're not diverse, which I don't agree with. There's multiple types of diversity. There's diversity of thought, diversity of religion, there's diversity of sexual preference, there's diversity of gender, there's diversity of geography. And I think we get labeled often at the PGA of America that we're just, all white males. I think we have to remember, yes, we're 95, 96, 90, maybe 94% white male right now. But those white males are also grew up very differently, from different backgrounds, from different wealth perspectives, from different parts of the country. So I tell women who are looking to advance in the PGA of America to just keep in mind that we also have an unconscious bias, and to make sure when you're in a room and you're in a room only with men that's incredibly uncomfortable, keep in mind some of them are uncomfortable too, because they're not like everybody either. And it's not just you that's different. Perhaps you're just seeing it in one way because you're a female. But my hope is that women in our organization start to use their voice. And to do that, you have to be in the room. And to be in the room, you have to be a little brave and decide that, you know what, I'm not that different. I do the same job they do. I put in the same hours they have. I put in the same education they have. I'm not a female PGA professional, I'm a PGA professional. And that's the way I always looked at it.
Yeah, that's an important way to look at it. And it can be difficult at times. I think we've all been there, that we walk into a section meeting and it's a couple of hundred people, and there's only 15 people that look like you per se. But it is true. Everyone has that uncomfortable moments, and they might feel the same way that you do. How do we start changing some of those conversations, though, on the section level? I mean, the PGA of America on a national level has done an incredible job with their diversity and inclusion class and programs that they've done for the last, I think it's maybe 6-7 years now. How do we get that, though, to filter through all through the different sections to kind of start kind of that grassroots discussion?
Yeah, I'm also a believer in local is where things happen, right? It's fine that national, we put in place PGA Lead. We put in multiple programs to encourage those that didn't look the same to know that their voice mattered. And to your point, it's been incredibly successful. In fact, just this past week in Indiana, there's another female president that just got elected, Catherine Benson, which is incredibly exciting. We have multiple women on boards of directors now, multiple women in officer positions now, which when you look at the percentages of female to male PGA professionals is pretty incredible. We're still at 4.8%, and our leadership numbers are gaining traction very quickly. I have a belief that women tend to be great in leadership positions, especially in this business, because typically and generally speaking, we are incredibly collaborative and persuasive. And we don't walk in a room making sure that, oh, this is going to happen. We actually listen to what perhaps could happen and then make really conscious, intentional, actionable choices. So I think, number one, if you're not on a committee, you need to be on a committee. The only way this is going to change is with your voice. And so the first place I tell people to start is call up your section office, call up your section president, call up your section vice president, call up somebody on the board and mention your interest to participate. And if there aren't any seats available, on a committee that you like. And I always tell people, make sure you join a committee that you're actually interested in so you enjoy the experience. So if you love to teach, join that committee. If you love sponsors and marketing, join that committee. If you love governance, join that committee. Whatever you're into, budget, that's what you should join first to give yourself a good flavor and feel super comfortable in what you're talking about. But then kind of reach out to a committee that perhaps you've never had involvement with and see what that's all about. And I always tell people, if there's no room or you're denied, ask if you can just join the committee meeting as a listener. There should be not a committee in the country that says no to you, period. And if they say no to you, you should be calling your section president and ask why you can't just come and sit to learn more about governance. Because until we put ourselves there and really understand what's happening at the section level, I think number one, you'll get a very clear understanding of how much local works, how your section works, the amount of effort that's put in for all of us to wear our logo. And that's really compelling to me and always made me feel great when I left there. There are people really working for me that care about the PGA of America and my membership. And so when I pay those dues, you don't go, oh my gosh, what am I paying these for? I go to a meeting, I'm the only one in the room. I don't know what I'm getting out of this. This is ridiculous. I haven't gotten promoted. The other thing that you'll find, if you're in governance in your section, you are now, I always try to make a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So, mentorship is finding somebody who's going to help you as a listener, not as a decider, kind of navigate your career choices, navigate the profession itself, understand, be able to be your truth teller, call up and tell them a situation has occurred. And I would say my best mentors never gave me the answers, but made me really think about what I was asking and where it was coming from, and then help me kind of navigate my way through whatever issues there are. And I still talk to mentors once a week. Sponsors are people who talk about you in a positive way in the marketplace. And when you're in governance and you start to meet those that are in governance, which are typically high-profile PGA professionals in your section, you will now be known. You will now be talked about. They will support your efforts. And when you look for that promotion or you're going for that job interview, you have an entire network of people that can speak about you and talk about you because they've worked with you on committees and in section opportunities. It doesn't mean you can't have that without being in governance, but I'm here to tell you, I would never have been in some of the seats I was in without the men that supported me through governance, because they talked about me. They said, I worked with her. She did this, this, and this, or she has these traits, or these are the skills that I think would benefit her in this particular role. And I think when we do that, what we'll find is, because I find one of the issues in the golf industry still today, and it has not changed, is our lack of promotability. We have plenty of women PGA professionals who should be in director of instruction positions, HP positions, general manager positions, owners, and I still see them as second assistants. I still see them being held back and not given the job. Now, some of that is because of boards at private clubs who can't envision a woman yet being their golf professional. That's changing, which I'm thrilled about, but very slowly. Some of it is that you're not being promoted like the other professionals are. Not because you're not great at it or that you don't deserve it, but because they don't know you. And I think that's really keenly important.
And I do firmly believe that being a woman in this industry, it's actually a secret weapon because there are less of us. And if you can promote yourself well and have those connections, you're going to be at the top of the list for any job that you're looking for. We always talk a lot, especially at the beginning of the season, trying to fill different employment spots, assistant professional positions, et cetera, and the difficulty of doing so. And I always say, there's a lot of great female professionals out there, and you just have to put your foot forward to make yourself known with that. Any advice that you have, Suzy, for those that are ready to take the plunge into being a head professional at a club? How do they navigate that process with the club, with the management, with the interview, et cetera?
Yeah, I'll give you well, I think it's a funny story. So my very first head golf professional position, I was a teacher. I worked for the Jim Flick Golf Schools for years. My husband and I moved to Connecticut because he took a job at a country club in Connecticut. And this is how old I am. I went through the phone book when I arrived in Connecticut, and I had a 2-year-old and a brand new baby. And I was like, well, I want to stay home every day. I want to go back to teaching. And I went through the phone book and looked up the 5 private country clubs closest to my house. The first one, I drove with a 1-pager resume, like certainly not a resume that in today's world would be acceptable. I think it said my name, my phone number, and like I had played on tour and I'd worked for Jim Flick. That was about it, and where I went to college. I dropped them off at the 5 country clubs, and immediately because then we had answering machines, got home, and every single club had called me back, not because of my resume, but because obviously there weren't any women who were in the area teaching. So the closest country club was the job I took. And only because of proximity, not because I knew anything about it or any part of it. Long story short, I loved it there. Never thought I would leave there. They treated me amazingly well. However, there was a public golf course down the road about 2 miles that had a female owner. And the female owner wanted a female golf professional. I had never even considered being a head golf professional. I thought I always wanted to be a coach and a teacher. And she called me and asked me if I would come have lunch with her. And I thought it was going to be about teaching. So I drove down, had lunch with her, and she said, I want to hire you as my head golf professional. I said, I have absolutely no experience as a head golf professional. You're out of your mind. Meanwhile, she was incredibly progressive. She had daycare on site. And you got to remember, this was in the early 2000s. And she said, no, I want to hire you to be my head golf professional. And literally made me an offer in the moment. And I said no. And I went back home and I was chatting with my husband about it. And she called me that night and she doubled the offer. And I said, my husband works as a general manager. I can't possibly work a 100-hour work week. I have 2 babies. She said, will you bring your babies to daycare on site? It's not going to be a problem. I want you to be my head golf professional. I tell you all this because there are going to be things like this that land in your lap. And you're going to have to make a choice and say to yourself, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm going to jump in, or I'm going to take the safe route and I'm going to stay doing what I'm doing because it's a little bit easier and I like it and I'm comfortable. Well, knowing that what I said in the very outset of the conversation, I said yes. And my very first day as a head golf professional, the next day I had to run 5 high schools, 5 leagues off 2 tee starts and get a 2 tee start shotgun morning and afternoon off the very next day with like 1 staff member. I had never run a league. I had never had to deal with high school. I had always worked at private clubs. I had no idea what I was doing and it completely tanked. I had 50 people in my office screeching at me because I had 5 people teeing off at the same time. The carts were soaked. Nobody had dried them. The scorecards were soaked. Nothing was right. And I literally was in tears in front of 50 people at this golf shop thinking to myself, you have to be kidding me. I used to be good at what I do. I now suck at what I do. And this is a horrible job. Long story short, I survived it. And it was one of my favorite jobs I ever had. The only reason why I left it in 2005 is because I had played in the GHO during that time on the PGA Tour, and I started to go to TV and commentating, and I was never on site. All that is just to tell you, you will learn what you need to learn to do the job. So we did a study when I was in office for the PGA of America with female and male assistant golf professionals. And we asked them we gave a job description that had 10 items on it of criteria for sending your resume in to get the job. For the men that we had do that, they only needed 3 of the 10 criteria to apply. Think about that for a second. They chose to apply having 3 out of the 10. For the women, 9. The women didn't apply unless they had 9 out of the 10 criteria for that job. So what does that tell you about us? Well, in general, it tells you that we are incredibly hard workers. We will learn what we need to learn, and we want to be ready when the time is ready and the time is given to us. We want to know everything when we walk in that door. Huge generalization, but that's what that told us. The guys, they were like, you know what? I'm just going to get the interview and I'm going to figure it out. And if I get this job, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to do this and get people to help me and support me. And I'm going to kill it. And I may struggle in the beginning, but I'm going to learn it because I'm smart, I'm capable, and I've been in the business a long time and I know I can get the job done. I think if we took on a little bit of that mentality when it's a stretch job, it doesn't mean you're going to get the interview. But my point is, just don't be afraid of something you've never done. Don't be afraid that you're not ready, because nobody's ever really ready, ever. But you will get ready. And you will find the group that's on this call, and you will call every one of these people on here who's been a head golf professional and say, can you help me? I have never once made a phone call to a PGA member, male or female, and said that where they haven't said yes. And so I just encourage you to think about your choices, really think about what's holding you back from maybe making that next step. It could be a boss, it could be you've been denied, you haven't gotten the interview. Why, right? Why? Figure that out with your career consultant. Figure out what maybe there's a hole in your resume and go get it. Go learn it. Go get certified. Whatever's missing that you think held you back, grab it. But at the same time, I think you're going to be surprised. Sometimes when you put your name in the hat and you don't fulfill all the criteria, you get picked.
I know we have a couple of ladies on the call that have been in those positions, director of golf, head professional. Sarah, are you on the call? Sarah Muldoon?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Hi,
Yeah,
Sarah.
and hear a couple, brief words from you in regards to kind of what your experience has been there at Hershey. I mean, gosh, largest resort in Pennsylvania, incredibly well known. What's it been like for you?
So I've been here 27 years, as some of you already know, and it's been a true honor to be here. Before I answer those questions, Suzy, it was a true honor for the first female president of the PGA of America to call me when I won Merchandiser of the Year. So that was awesome. So thank you.
Deserved it.
Just I feel like I work hard. I feel like I have a great attitude. Being PGA member since 2001, I was in my earlier time, I was probably one of two females playing with the boys. And so I just never said no to myself. I just tried to prove I'm worth it. I'm worth the head golf professional position, the director of golf position. I just feel like I work hard and I have a good attitude towards things. So, and just try to think, it's just golf. It's not heart surgery. And like Suzy was saying, she made some mistakes in that one job. I've ticked off 120 women at one time. So, it's just golf. Like we do take it serious, but we're not hopefully killing people. So, like I said, I just try and work hard.
Yeah, I think for this generation too, if I can add to that, Sarah, like Sarah and I became members, and I became member at the same time in 2001. And what I love about what's happening in the world, not just in the PGA of America, is at least when I was coming up, it was just head down, just do the work, just be really good at it, and hope you get recognized, right? And that's just how it was. I think in today's environment, young women aren't willing to tolerate that anymore. And so, yeah, I totally agree. Like the energy, the enthusiasm, the understanding that not everything is necessarily because you're a woman is a very important perspective. But when it is obvious and when it's there, young women are more apt to call it out. And I encourage that. I think we lived with it. I used humor to sidestep it when I knew it was flagrant and sexist. You are going to still run into that. It still lives in the world. We all know that. But I think there's a time period here that we have an incredible opportunity to, as Alison said so beautifully, is to change the language. We've been trying to change the language for 20 years at the PGA of America. We've been trying to change the Constitution for 20 years to change the language at the PGA of America. I tried incredibly hard for 8 years to change the language at meetings and make an awareness, because oftentimes some of the verbiage that's used is unintentional, and I truly believe that. So for example, I grew up in the Northeast, and I'm a female, but I consider a group of people a group of guys. It's just a Northeast vernacular where I'll say, hey guys, let's go to the lesson tee. And I might be teaching 15 women. It's something I'm trying to change, but it absolutely is in my language. And I get emails all the time from young women who have gone to section meetings where they say, good morning, gentlemen, and don't say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or they say, hey guys, we'd all like you to stand up, or guys is used nonstop through the meeting. It's really important to point those things out in a positive way. In other words, don't just tell the female you're sitting next to how much that annoys you. Oftentimes when you tell a group of people at lunch that you find it interesting that you're sitting there in that room and you're still not acknowledged that you're sitting in the room, it's pretty disrespectful. When you say it like that, the people sitting at your table, oftentimes there'll be some that'll say, oh, we're in a woke culture, we can't do anything right anymore. But there'll be plenty that will pay attention. Plenty that have daughters, plenty that maybe didn't realize how often that's done in our association and how uncomfortable it makes some women feel. So I'm excited about all of you. I'm excited about what's to come in our organization, because you're so capable and you're so ready. And the PGA of America, I'm here to tell you, needs you way more than you need them. And I love the PGA of America, but I say that with the utmost respect for the organization. But this organization is better because of you. So I just don't want you to tolerate feeling disrespected. I want you to live in a place where you feel valued. And to do that, sometimes, yes, we put our head down, we work hard, we use humor to navigate it. But there's times that I'm super proud of all of you, because people are starting to speak up in a way that other people can listen. And that's super cool.
You had mentioned a couple questions back, you're talking a little bit about mentorship. You know, who in your career has been a great mentor for you, and you know, what can we do to be better mentors for each other? I mean, I think one of the reasons why we wanted to create this women's committee, which again, now we're 3 years in, was to be mentors or resources for each other. Because, you know, it's the idea of it takes a village if we can all help each other out. So what kind of advice do you have towards that?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many incredible people in my life that I consider mentors. From a PGA standpoint, too many to name, but I'll name a few of the women. So Renee Powell is an unbelievable mentor to me. I got to know Renee the first year I was a member in 2001, when I was put on the National Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And what makes me laugh to this day, it was Ernie Ellison, who was a staff member who also happened to be African-American, Renee Powell, Mary B. Porter, a woman, and me. And we all laughed at the fact that we were the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, but we were the diversity of the organization. You know? So we felt like there should be somebody on that committee that was actually a white male. But that's where I got to know Renee so well. And over the course of my career with the PGA of America and my career in the game itself, she's been such a guiding light for me. The challenges that she's faced throughout her life, mine pale in comparison. And I could never imagine the things that Renee has gone through. And she's never once stopped advocating for the game. She's never once stopped supporting the PGA of America and its mission, all the while facing unreal and enormous blockades throughout her career. So she's a mentor for me that will always be. I can call her at any time. I can share, you know, good things that have occurred, bad things that occurred, emotional things that have occurred, things that I cannot wrap my head around and need some guidance and need some help. She's just an unbelievable listener. And again, never really gives me the answer that I want to hear, but makes me think about different perspectives for things. And I think that's the key for me. Asuka Nakahara, when I was on the National Board of Directors my first year in 2011, he was in my incoming class in 2010. He's a professor at Wharton, and he to this day is an unbelievable mentor for me. He's from Marion and Philadelphia Country Club, and he is this unbelievable gentleman who I speak to him once a month about challenges I face, decisions I'm having to make, career opportunities that I'm considering. And so, you know, when I look to having a mentor, you have to realize there's two sides of this, right? You're the mentee, and then there's the mentor. And I think it's a two-way street. So when you put a mentor group together like this, and you have these unbelievable people willing to share, like Sarah, their experiences and have time, I would always just say to people, as the mentee, make sure you come to that conversation with real questions and concerns. Make sure you come to that conversation with intent, because for somebody to take their time and willingly take their time, which all of you are doing, it's really important that you make that hour worth it, that you get something from it and that the mentor gets something from it, because I find that builds the best mentor-mentee relationships that are long lasting. And then I always say, I put a time on it. So I try to do once a month with the people that I mentor. And then as a mentee, I try to get on my mentor's calendar once a month, just as a check-in. It could be 15 minutes, right? These are the 3 things I'd love to chat with you about today. Do you have 15 minutes? These are the 2 things I'd like to chat with you about. I'm facing a challenge here. This is my challenge. You know, can you help me navigate this in a positive way, or that can help me make a decision here? And again, I really believe this sincerely. Mentors aren't there to give you the answers. They're there to help you with your considerations and the shaping of your thoughts. And that's what I found the best relationships to be. But it takes effort, it takes scheduling, and it takes a commitment to make it a positive experience for both sides.
Does anyone else have thoughts on mentorship? Maybe any experiences that you've had throughout your career, whether being a mentee or a mentor?
See, I'm just talking too much. Everybody's really quiet.
Well, Matt, how about you? I know we've kind of talked in the section level of kind of having a mentor-mentee program for at least those folks that are coming to the section, new to the section. You know, can you kind of talk a little bit about that? And then also maybe just, I think it's important for all of us on the call here to also kind of hear from the section's perspective in terms of, you know, your support that you have given us in terms of the women's committee, because we all wouldn't be here without the support of you and Courtney and Jeff allowing us to kind of move forward with this. So I'd love to just hear a few minutes from you.
Yeah, thanks for the nice comments. You know, as far as the women's committee goes, I know you just gave us props, but it really starts and kind of ends with the women that serve on the committee. You know, as we've kind of discussed in the past, we can make it what you put into it. And the women that have been involved with the committee have always come prepared with a lot of good ideas. And, you know, because it is such a new committee, there's still some growing pains and such, but we're always looking for additional input and additional feedback. And to kind of piggyback off of what Suzy said earlier, there's always room on the committee where if you're not involved with the committee and you're interested, please reach out to Megan or myself or Courtney, and we'll make sure you stay involved going forward. Megan, I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question?
Just kind of talking about mentorship. So I know in the past on the section level, we've talked about trying to put together a nice little mentor program, especially for new PGA professionals coming into the section.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's been kind of a point of frustration to an extent. So over the past, well, since I've been in the section for 10 years, there's been various attempts to have a structured mentor program where we assign new associates or new professionals to our section, you know, a quote unquote mentor that they can help guide these new professionals through our section and our programming. What we found, unfortunately, the mentors have put forth their, you know, their effort and their due diligence. There wasn't a lot of give back on the new professional side. So that's something that we've kind of struggled with and gone back and forth, and certainly always looking for additional feedback and ways we can improve. But talking to some of our pros on like our member committee, they said it's hard for young professionals who've never met somebody who's been assigned to them to really have that or grow organically. And it kind of goes back to what Suzy was saying, is that the pupil has to want the knowledge and wants to improve, and that it's just not going to be the case for every single person. But we're still dedicated to helping our members through. So like I said, any feedback that you can provide, we're all ears. Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually thought about it real quick. You mentioned the mentoring. I actually just finished up the other week my specialization in teaching and coaching. Thank you. It was a good time, but part of the requirement of that, you have to do the whole capstone and go through PGA library. But the last part of it, which I didn't realize, is like a mentoring kind of program. I had to reach out to 3 brand new members, just in general, 3 brand new members. I didn't know where to begin, so I reached out to Sue Unger, because I know Sue takes care of our membership here, and she put me in touch with 3 individuals. And it was, so I emailed them and set up a time to call them and just chat with them for 15 minutes and introduce myself and learn about them. It was actually kind of a fun experience. 2 of the guys I talked to are in Florida right now, but they're going to be up here, and they just graduated from Penn State recently on the PGM program. So, it was nice to hear their story and talk to them. And then one of the gentlemen I talked to was around my age, a little bit, like a couple years older than me. He was about 40, and wants to go completely on the executive management track. And I was like, wow, this is, how'd you want to go that way? Why did you feel like it took you so long to become a member? And just hearing his story was really, really cool. I don't think they're going to reach back out to me, even though I ended the conversation with, I'd love to keep in touch. We're all in the section. I'd love to help you out if anything is going on. Like, I'm going to reach out to the guys in Florida when they get back here this spring, and, just so they don't forget about me. And then hopefully they'll be able in a couple months to turn around and call me up and say, hey, I just got something exciting happen at work. I wanted to tell you about it. Like, I'm kind of hoping that it goes that direction. But like Matt was just saying, it all comes to the pupil. But it was a good experience. I was nervous to make the cold call, but at the end of the day, I got off all 3 calls as I'm writing notes. I was like, wow, that was really fun talking to that guy. That was really fun getting to know him. So, yeah, so I guess it's just up to us to reach out and them to reach back out.
Yeah, that's all we can really do. Courtney, go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks, Andrea. I just wanted to piggyback off of that and kind of give Sue Unger a big shout out at our section office. Not all sections have a Sue Unger. She is our membership representative, and she really has all of the reports for any of our membership. So Megan has been really good at getting that report for any new women PGA professionals that come into our section. So if anybody is interested in being a mentor, being a sponsor for any of our PGA professionals that are coming into our section, Sue is a really great resource for us in our office and for any of our PGA professionals. So shout out to Sue.
Suzy, I
Thank
have a
you.
quick question for you, kind of in regards to involving and engaging our women PGA professionals.
Sure.
So we have our women's committee, and we rely on them heavily to engage with our give or take 30 women members. But how, throughout your travels as an officer, what have you seen in other sections that seem to work for their women professionals? In other words, how have they stayed engaged, whether it be in an official capacity or not?
I think it's the culture of the section, right? I think every section is extremely different, obviously, because we talked about that earlier, right? Because of geography, because of objectives, meaning, California, for an example, their biggest concern is water rights, right? You're not going to have that in New Hampshire, right? About water rights. So, depending on where the section is headed and what their mission is and what their priorities are, certainly number one makes a difference. But number two, it's the culture. It's the officer culture. It's the core culture of the staff and the executive director. Is that culture? We use this word welcoming, which I think is so overused. I love being welcome, but what does that even mean? As far as coming into a section, whether you're male or female, the sections that I think do it, you're one of them, but the sections I think do it the best, instead invite, not welcome, but invite. I'd love to have you join us for a webinar. I'd love to have you join us for our section meeting, a personal phone call to a new member, male or female. I see you're not registered, and I think this would be a great way if you're, I'd love to meet you at the front door. And, people have to realize that COVID did a number on a lot of people. Right? People become very isolated, and it's comfortable to be isolated. And I think we have this opportunity as this collegial organization where we all have a similar position, meaning we don't all do the same jobs, but we all have this similar love for golf. So we share a commonality right out of the gate. And I think the sections that do it best are the ones who make an effort to invite and to include in a way that's authentic, and in a way that once that person gets there, they're not left. They're not left, okay, well, I came, but now I have nobody to eat lunch with, and I have nobody. Think about going to your first day of school, right? There are definitely kids the first day of school that could care less where they sit and have the confidence to sit anywhere they want, the extroverts. And then you think about our business, and there's plenty of introverts in our business that's just not comfortable for them. And when they have somebody to meet at the door or somebody to have a guaranteed lunch with, and they don't sit by themselves, you'll see them open up. You'll see them understand that this is an organization that's meant to be a service capacity to each other and to the game and to our families and to work. And when they feel that, they become involved. They want to be a part of it. They're proud to wear the logo. When they just get that Class A plaque and never hear from anybody again, never really hear from the section again other than by email, never really hear from another member other than the staff they work with, it's incredibly isolating. And I encourage your section, other sections, yours, Southern Cal, North Texas, South Florida, and I don't want to exclude sections, so I shouldn't have listed any, but you're making a real effort to include. And people can make a choice not to join, and that's okay. But when you make that effort, people remember, you know what, I did get invited to a couple of things last year. I should have probably gone. Maybe I'll go this year. So I would just say, don't stop inviting. And then once you invited, then be welcoming. But to lead with welcoming, a lot of people aren't going to come.
That's a very fair point. And just as one aside, we obviously working with other sections, there's some it's complicated because they're a partner, but also they're a competitor. But one of the things that we've done, particularly things like for the women's committee and some of our education events is while we're promoting it mostly just to our members, we do open it up and encourage and invite others from other sections to hop on or join us if they even want to drive in. We did that today. I don't know if anyone from another section hopped on today, but Eric Hanley and Brian are a perfect example here. They're from Penn State, and they sent the invitation to some of their students, and I think we have one or two female Penn State students on the call today too. So little things like that go a long way.
Yeah, and I think too, I would encourage you to invite men because they hold the jobs, right? They own the employment right now. And I hope someday, like Alison said, by 2050, we are the ones making the hiring decisions and at least equitable. But right now, it's just not the case. Men are making the hiring decisions in most often every scenario, certainly not in all. And that's exciting. We definitely have made progress over the course of the last 8 years. But when you include men too in your conversations, again, that awareness, the understanding, the perspective, it doesn't mean they're going to agree with everything you say, but they're just going to have a different perspective of what you're going through in your career, maybe what your concerns are, what your challenges are, what things you love about it are. And I think oftentimes we forget that. We forget to share those things. We share them with each other. But we forget to actually share them with the people that are making the hiring decisions. And for that to change, they should be in the conversation too. I love the fact that you're a women's committee and you have an opportunity to chat together. And that's important too. But don't be afraid to open up some of your meetings to some of your male membership and your male leaders, because I think they would get a keen awareness of some of the challenges that you're facing and how you're looking at it. And it's not just you complaining. It's you actually trying to make a difference. And when you come with solutions trying to make a difference, anybody in the business would pay attention and listen, I think.
That's great advice. We have about 15 minutes left. Great opportunity. Does anyone have any other specific questions they want to kind of throw out there and chat a little bit about?
May I put Eric on the spot? Eric or Brian or whoever, Mitchell. Can you talk a little bit about your recruitment process and how that might have changed or been altered over the past 5-6 years when it comes to recruiting more women?
Yeah, happy to hop on, and thanks for the opportunity to allow the women in our program to be a part of this. We have on a Wednesday morning between 9 and 11 a.m. there are class schedules that interfere with some of this. So those that weren't on this have already asked to get access to the recording. So I know they're excited for this. And just sitting here thinking, we have well, as it pertains to recruiting, I think the work that the PGA has done with adding recruiting efforts to each section has been a big win for all the university programs, I believe. Certainly for us, we're already seeing some of the fruits of that with the employment groups also supporting those efforts as well. And then getting people on campus is a big thing for us. So if we can have them visit and they can interact with the students already in our program, the women that are in the program has been a big piece. I'll say the numbers are still low. I think every university would want them to be higher. We are excited for this coming year. Applications are up dramatically for our program. We're up around 100 applicants, which is quite a bit higher than it had been recently. We already have 3 women who've committed as first-year students next year, so we're really excited about that. And I think we've been having a lot of conversations recently with the women in our program around several conversations like what we're having today with you all. So There's a lot of carryover here. I think ideally, we would love for this to start earlier, maybe before they get to the section level, in the university level, and welcome the opportunity to maybe have this committee on campus with us, maybe in the fall, as our first year students start. I think it could be a great opportunity for the women in our program, and Suzy, as you were just saying, I think a great opportunity to influence the direction of thinking for the men in our program as well.
That's great. Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah, so it just got me thinking, great advice today and whatnot. A lot of the stuff that's been said is stuff I've been kind of thinking about lately and feeling, and, you know, reaching out to people like, what do we do about this? So today's been great. And we're talking about, you know, women. We hope to have more of a say in 2050, but, you know, you look at the jobs and it's like, in Suzy, you said, just apply for it, see what happens. But I actually years ago ran into a situation where there was already a female working there, and she was not the one doing the hiring. And I applied for the job, and I got all the way down to the end. It was between me and a male, and I'd just been like 1 month PGA membership in hand. He was barely starting level 1. He got hired over me when the job description actually said PGA member required. So I was being really upset about that. And everyone around me told me, they said, well, it wasn't you. It was because they already had a woman. They didn't want 2 women, and they wanted to spread the demographic around. So I'm sure that still exists out. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm sure it's still out there in some places. I put this to anybody, even the men on the call. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm going to answer real quick and then let everybody talk. So when I first went to Mirasol, Andrea, there was a young woman, I consider myself young still, so she's my age, so we're just going to call it young. We're not young, who is an acclaimed instructor, acclaimed, unbelievable talent. The membership loved her. And when I walked in the door, literally the first day, 5 members asked me if I was going to fire her. And I said, why in the world would I ever fire her? They said, well, you're here now. Right? This was just 4 years ago. Right? So this is prevalent in golf culture, where they see their facility as having 1 woman, they've checked the box. And again, I'm generalizing, but I'm here to tell you that's where all of you are going to make a difference. Because when you bring it to their attention, and when I had a respectful conversation with those members about why that's insane for me to absolutely get rid of somebody who is this tremendous. And oh, by the way, we have 7 male teachers. Not sure why that doesn't correlate. As a matter of fact, and I said this back, as a matter of fact, I would like to hire 9 females. So maybe we'll have 1 male teach, and then I'll have 8 women, and I'm going to hire the very best for the job. And you know what? Every single one of them said, I feel like an idiot. I apologize. I never looked at it that way. And I think oftentimes it just takes that voice to say, well, hang on a second. In your situation, obviously, you didn't have the chance. But I think as a group, and I always feel you are stronger as a group. You can do this working together with simple messages, with 1 clear, concise voice, with the understanding that it's always not going to still work. Our history is getting better. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. But together with 1 voice, there will be a club somewhere, and there are now, actually, I shouldn't say that, in Naples, where it's an entirely female staff. Fantastic, right? So long as they're the best for the job. In your situation, you obviously were more experienced for the job. So that was just a failing of that club and that hiring team. And I think what you have to take away from that, and I mean this sincerely, is you have to say to yourself, they didn't deserve me. Because in that culture, I wouldn't have been happy anyway. I deserved that position. I didn't get it. They chose somebody less experienced because of their gender. Probably not a place that I need to be. Right? And I think when you look at it that way, it will flip the conversation in your head. It doesn't mean it's not disappointing and unfair, and you're going to hear, oh yeah, life's unfair and that's too bad, just pick up your bootstraps. No, like, have the logical conversation with yourself in a non-emotional moment. So you know what? I'm better than that club anyway, and I'm going to find a better position. But when you become the hirer, when you have the opportunity make sure that your eyes are open and you have unconscious bias too. Because in committees, I always felt my job was to bring another female with me. Anywhere I go, I'm going to try to elevate another female in the business. It doesn't mean I'm not trying to elevate a male. But if I'm elevating a male, I'm going to go find a female that I'm going to elevate too. And if we all do that as you rise in your careers and your career ranks, the hiring will look extremely different than it looks today. All of us, me and my husband would say the same. We gravitate to people like us to hire. You have to, as a manager, say, hold on a second. Let me get my unconscious bias out here. Let me figure out what I need to do. Who do I really need in this position? And if it's a tie, I'm here to tell you I'm biased. I'm picking the woman, right? I guarantee you that probably leans that way for guys. If it's not, if it's totally clear that the female is the one to get the job, she's getting the job. However, if I have a male up against a female and it was vice versa, to your point, Andrea, I'm hiring the man. And I think some of us might say, she's a woman and she didn't hire me. Like, you also, as the person applying, need to kind of take a moment, take 24 hours, take 48 hours, and then look at it with no emotion. Okay, what would I have done? You know what? That person probably is more qualified, right? So I just think we have to all kind of take a deep breath, but I'm here to tell you your voice, and I wrote an email this morning to the young woman who is now the president in Catherine, who's the president in Indiana. And she asked me for like a couple things. She sent me this laundry list of things she wanted to accomplish, which is amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, of course you do. You have 100 things on this list, and I'm so excited for you. One step at a time, take it one moment at a time, and gather your troops. This is collaborative. Like, if you think of each other as a team and you move forward as such, you will elevate so much faster than by yourselves. So good for you for putting this group together. Good for you for sharing concerns. But you really do have to share the challenges in an environment where it's safe and where people are compelled to help you find solutions, right? And so when you do these committees, you can't be afraid to say something that you think nobody else has experienced. You can't be afraid to tell people this is a safe space. This is a committee where you're supposed to share ideas. And you may go, gosh, this is what I'm facing at work. And like 12 other people are like, oh, hang on. I did that too. Let me tell you how we navigated it. And then it might be something that everyone's like, wow, I haven't had that happen before. Tell us what's going on. How can we help you? So I think, Matt, to, the mentorship piece, for sure, it takes buy-in. And that's hard when people don't know each other. But I think when you have a group like this, and you have the opportunity to expand it into even beyond and outside your section, you will be incredibly amazed at how much you can accomplish by offering up some team leaders for it, having little small groups that break out, coming back and presenting to each other. And it'll be so fulfilling for you, because you will be friends for life through your careers, even by Zoom. And you will run into each other in an annual meeting somewhere and be like, can you believe what we got accomplished in Philly? And now we're in 12 sections, and this is what we're doing, and this is who got promoted, and snaps to her, and shooting off those notes and those emails and saying, gosh, job well done. Or if there's somebody that just lost their job, I hate to hear what just happened to you. Is there anything we can do to help you? Like, everybody's going to lose a job sometime. Everybody's going to be in a bad place, right? This group you formed is for each other. And that's something to be incredibly proud of. I wish we had that. I wish Sarah and I had that long ago. I had it with maybe two women. I just got lucky. I married a PGA professional that I could complain to all the time, right? For 31 years, I had the chance to complain to him all the time. But when you have a group of women who can support you, and men who can be a part of the conversation in a real way without judging you, and with you feeling like you're not just being dramatic because you're alone in this, you'll realize you're not alone in it. And we can do better. We can always do better. And the PGA of America needs to do better. And they're going to do it because of you guys.
That's awesome. Thank you. Jenna, go for it.
So this kind of ties in the past couple things that we've been talking about. So I have a I'll call it a non-traditional role as a golf professional. I am a young woman and I am a territory manager for a club manufacturer, which is definitely different.
Yeah.
So for me, as a young professional, as a woman, as someone that is extremely interested in being a mentor and being a mentee, both what do I do and what can I do to help to start from the bottom at the PGM programs? Like, how do I help make it known that you can be a young woman, and if you're really into technology and you like club fitting, like, you can still be a golf professional too. You don't have to be a head pro. You don't have to be a teaching pro. There's so much more to golf than that. And how do we normalize that? And how do we elevate people, men, women, anybody that are in those non-traditional roles? And as a PGA professional myself, who doesn't really teach anymore that much, I am a coach and I do teach on the side as well. But how do I continue to participate and feel really in tune with my fellow professionals in my section? Because I truly feel like everything's really focused on your green grass, and how do we include everybody? Because we have like another one, Laura Manchester is an awesome rep. We have so many sales reps. We have so many other jobs in the industry. And I feel like, what can we do as a section to include those others, to encourage young women starting the program, that like they don't have to be a merchandise manager, like they can do whatever? And then how do we let girls know that we're in my position where I was an assistant that was currently just like constantly overqualified and stuck, and then having a lot of men over me, and then I ended up in a non-traditional role. How do you encourage people that that's an option too, and that you're still a golf pro, and that you can be included, and all of that? So advice.
You just did. That was amazing. And that's what you need to continue to do. And I'll let the section answer how you can help them get that message out. But that message is so incredibly important. I chose coaching and teaching because I love it, right? It's something I've always been passionate about and enjoy. Not every female wants to be a coach or a teacher, right? Not everybody wants to be in a golf shop, but like Sarah's flipping amazing at it alongside everything else she does, right? So to your point, the PGA of America nationally is working incredibly hard to get your message out, because that message also needs to be told. The manufacturers are way more progressive, in my opinion, than the association's mindset on who is a club fitter. And again, it's not intentional. Manufacturers are hiring women right and left. They're amazing at tech. They understand computer science. They love fitting. So they're on board. It's how do we make sure you're feeling welcome and included, and also that you have an opportunity to talk to PGM university students. Like, in my opinion, the PGA of America should be putting you on the road, going to every single PGM university on Zoom and talking for 20 minutes about your career choices. Not because you're a woman, but because what you love to do. And if they did that, it would open up so many career opportunities for women. Because most women, to your point, that I've spoken to that are young, think coaching and teaching is the track that they should take. But that's just because that's what they see the most of. But I'll let the section answer how they're going to knock that one out, because she just put that right in your lap. How are you going to handle that one?
Sorry, guys.
We'll have to schedule a committee meeting soon.
I think, John, you have your hand raised.
Yes, this is to Suzy's point about section culture. It probably goes a question to Matt. We have some wonderful instructors, directors of instruction, teachers in our section. And I'm behind the loop a little bit, so tell me, have any of them received our section of the Teacher of the Year award that you know of?
Are you speaking to women teachers of the year?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yes. We do. Help me here, Megan. It was Elizabeth Granahan. That's Elizabeth Granahan won a few years ago. She was the first woman, I think, in our section to win that award. I can't speak to how many nominations and applications we get. I'm not involved with that committee on a day-to-day basis, but I could certainly get that information and present it to the committee.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you.
Of course. Eric?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but I figured I would say it just in case it wasn't seen. Jenna or anyone else on the women's committee, we would love to continue to connect and talk and get you on campus, connect you with the other women in our program, and again, get you in front of any group that you'd be interested in to help begin the mentor process early. We would really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Jenna too, I think with the sections help, I'd love to have them reach out to PGA Magazine and Rick Summers, and you write up a little something for the magazine. Like all of you have the opportunity to do that. PGA Magazine isn't operated by the PGA of America, to be clear. It's operated by a different entity, Rick Summers, who licensed PGA. But everything in there is stories and content about PGA professionals. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've worked incredibly hard to change the imagery in PGA Magazine. Before 2011, the only time you saw a woman in that magazine was in a fashion ad, right? Or a person of color was in some sort of ad. And now you actually are seeing intentional imagery of all different types of PGA professionals, inclusive of white males. I mean, they're amazing at what they do, so they should be in there too. But there's no reason why you can't share that story in a cool little article that, the only thing I encourage you to do is encourage women and men to be in a different position in your career. But I think when people can see themselves in a career, it's way easier to think about it, right? And if your picture's there and there's a young woman who loves tech, but is like, well, gosh, my advisor or my parents think I should probably go this way, or I'm just feeling like I don't know that I can do that. And she sees you sitting there talking about it. You could literally change somebody's life, change somebody's career. So it's worth trying. And if the article is denied the first couple of times, just keep submitting, because they're out quite a ways, right? They're out a couple months in advance, but it doesn't mean it won't get in there in a club fitting issue of some sort where, they're always trying to highlight somebody like you who has the voice and the confidence to say, I love my job. I love what I do. And I don't see other people like me doing it. And I want to make sure people coming behind me. I think that's leadership. Leadership is about inspiring other people to succeed. And that's what you just did. So like I challenge Matt and Megan and Jeff to get that article printed in PGA Magazine for you.
Well, the good news is I have a pretty good relationship with Rick and Matt. I used to work, and so did Megan for that matter. We both used to work for the magazine. So Jenna, just say the word if you're interested. I'm more than happy to make that introduction to the appropriate folks.
Yeah, and that's for all of you too. Don't be afraid to promote yourself, right? Don't stand up. You want a voice, put yourself in there. Doesn't mean it'll go happen right away. That's okay. Right, just keep at it, keep at it. And pretty soon you'll wear them down. It's like, oh no, she wrote us again. Yes, we did. We don't go away. But again, rally your team, rally support around you. Use the people around you to help you get that done.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jenna, I just want to say, I think we need to finish up here, but I just want to comment that what you brought up, that even though you're not in the traditional role as a so-called golf professional or teaching professional, I totally understand that. I mean, I've done everything from being a director of golf to a college coach to, club management and director of membership, et cetera. I've seen the gamut of what this profession brings. And it can be difficult to feel like you're still connected when you aren't in a traditional role. It can feel very difficult. And I think what we've done is we try to get involved with these committees, et cetera, and the different organizations that are out there. And one of the things, Matt, I'm kind of hoping that maybe we could try to put together at some point is a list of, just on a local level, and I guess even nationally, different resources that are available. even things like the PGA Women's Leadership group that's out there. A lot of people don't know about that. Even some of the other local organizations with the Women's Golf Association in Philadelphia, Women Golfers Give Back, LPGA Girls Golf, etc. But maybe we could do that, just kind of create a formal list that we can kind of start reaching out to, just as resources down the road. Might be a nice little thing to have. But if anyone doesn't have any other questions, I know we kind of went over a little bit, but I just want to thank Suzy. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was great conversation. We could go on for hours and hours. Hopefully we have a chance to do it again. Hopefully if you're here at Wilmington over the next few months, stop in, say hi. I'd love to say hi to you.
Absolutely. Well, my sister is a member there, as you know. So at some point I will get there, I promise. But congratulations to all of you for putting in the work. It's extra time and all of us don't have it. And you've prioritized this. And I certainly, as a female PGA professional, appreciate it. The work you do is going to help everybody, including the men in our organization. And don't forget to include them, right? Remember how we feel when we're not included. So I appreciate the time and the effort. And if you need anything, absolutely reach out. I will do everything I can to get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Suzy.
Suzy.
Bye, guys. See, there you go. I can't say that. Bye, ladies and guys.
Thank you.
Bye.